וידבר אדוני אל משה אחרי מות שני בני אהרון בקרבם לפני אדוני וימוסו ויאמר אדוני אל משה דבר אל אהרון אחיך ואל יבוא בכל אל הקודש מבייס לפרוכס אל פני הכפורס אשר על הארון ולא ימוס כי בענן יראה על הכפורס וידבר אדוני אל משה לאמור דבר אל כל עדת בני ישראל ואמרת עליהם קדושים תהיו כי קדוש אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
We have two Torah portions for this week, and they are both connected. One is called Acharei Mot, and it starts in Leviticus chapter 16. And the next one is called Kedoshim, which talks about the Leviticus Code of Holiness. The chapter 16 of Leviticus is the central part of the entire Torah. In fact, the center of the Torah, the central words which are in the Torah are actually located in this chapter. The ritual of the atonement is the central part of the Jewish year, the sanctuary year. Before we talked about the daily service and the personal service. Now these Torah portions are talking about the yearly service, and also there is a monthly and weekly service. But this particular is the highlight. And the Lord spoke to Moses after the death of two sons of Aaron, and when they had approached the presence of the Lord and died, and the Lord said to Moses, tell your brother Aaron that he shall not enter at any time into the holy place inside the veil before the mercy seat, which is on the ark, or he will die. And for I will appear in a cloud over the mercy seat. This expression, the mercy seat, or in Hebrew, kaforet, already sets up the stage for the theme of the chapter. Kippur, or it is called Yom HaKippurim. And a kaforet is connected with that Kippur. The mercy seat idea comes from the works of Luther. Luther was thinking how to translate that kaforet, which is the top part of the ark, into German, and he came with expression of the throne of mercy and grace. That is true, that this is the throne of grace, but it's interesting how the law, the revelation, the Decalogue, is actually placed under it. There is no contradiction here in the Torah between the principle of God's character and the grace. Or mercy. Why is it mercy? First of all, the most confusing here is the word atonement, because this word in English is not used anywhere outside of the Bible. This is why often atonement is thought to be a reconciliation, but it doesn't make any sense here. Especially when it talks in Leviticus chapter 33 about the atonement for the holy sanctuary, and he shall make an atonement for the tent of meeting and for the altar, and he shall make an atonement for priests and for people of the assembly. Maybe for the people of the assembly and the priests would need any reconciliation, but what kind of reconciliation does the Holy of Holies need, or the tent of the meeting? This makes no sense. This is why it is important to notice the parallel which has been already studied in the book of Leviticus chapter 10 verse 17, where the word atonement, or kiper al, the verb, is connected with parallel with an idea of carrying out the sins. That's what happened. And that's why in the book of Leviticus chapter 23, that ritual is called Yom HaKippurim. Not just Yom Kippur as in today's Judaism often used, but Yom HaKippurim, the day of many Kippurs. And there are 4 of them right here in Leviticus 16:33. The Kippur for people, the Kippur for priests, the Kippur for altar, for the tent of the meeting, and for inner sanctum. All these objects and people carry the sin. Of course, the people are the ones who unload their sin into the sanctuary by bringing the sin offering, by leaning their hands upon the head of the sacrificial animals. But then the rest of the objects and people carry this sin for an entire year. The priests carry the sins, as it says in the book of Leviticus chapter 10 verse 17, because they eat the meat of the sin offerings. The holy place and the altar carry the sin because the blood is applied there. As in our Torah portion, it says right here in the book of Leviticus chapter 17 verse 11. For the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I have given it to you on the altar to make atonement for your souls. Well, we already know that the word atonement means carrying away the sins. So the blood carries away the sins from the people of Israel. For it is the blood by reason of life that makes atonement. Therefore, the sons of Israel, no person among you may eat the blood. In verse 10, it says that the blood is given for the altar. And this is these are 2 agents of sin transfer. The meat of the sacrificial animal, the sin offering that is eaten by the priest, and the blood which is carried inside the tent of the meeting when we have the sin of assembly and the sin of the priests. And this is why the sins are accumulating. And the day of Kippurim, the sins need to be kippured. If we talk in these terms, they need to be taken away, removed, and the sanctuary and the people must be relieved from them. And we know and we see how it happened right here in the ritual. It says here in the book of Leviticus chapter 16 that the Aaron shall offer the bull for the sin offering, verse 11, which is for himself, to make a kippur for himself and for his household, and he shall slaughter the bull for the sin offerings, which is for himself. And he shall make a censer or a fire pan full of coals of fire upon the altar before the Lord, and 2 handfuls of finely ground sweet incense, and bring it inside the veil. And he shall put the incense on the fire before the Lord, that the cloud of incense may cover the mercy seat, and that is on the ark of the testimony. Otherwise, he will die. Moreover, he shall take some blood of the bull and sprinkle it with his finger on the fire of the mercy seat on the east side, and also in front of the mercy seat. He shall sprinkle some blood with the 7 times. That's what Aaron has to do for his own situation. First, he has to enter the holy place twice, the Holy of Holies twice during the ritual, because he has to take care of himself and make the kippur for himself. And after the bull is taken care of and a kippur for the family of Aaron is made, now he's ready to make a kippur for all the people and for the sanctuary. And that's why he takes the goat and makes it as a sin offering and does exactly the same. And hear what it says. After he sprinkles the blood of the goat upon the mercy seat, now it says, he shall make a kippur for the holy place because of the impurities of the sons of Israel and because of their transgression in regards of their sins. And thus he shall do for the tent of meeting, which abides with them in the midst of their impurities. So the sprinkling of the blood of the goat, which is called Chatat HaKippurim, that special sin offering, the last sin offering in a year, removes the sins from the tent of meeting and from the Holy of Holies. All the sins that are accumulated in the sanctuary and upon the priests are now removed. Well, where do they go? That's a very important question. Because the kippur al, as we discussed in a previous Torah portion, is not just a removal of sin. It's a removal of sin by placing them upon somebody else. This has a very, very important connotation, because in reality, this communicates an important idea, legal idea, that somebody has to take the responsibility for sins. Sin cannot be taken lightly, that God just forgave and forgot. Somebody has to bear the consequences. Somebody has to take the responsibility. Otherwise, in the universe, there will be an absolute chaos. Who is taking this responsibility? If the Aaron does the kippur, he is the one who removes the sins from all the objects and people. So these sins now rest upon him. This is why it says here in verse 7, I shall read further, he shall take 2 goats and present them before the Lord at the doorway of the tent of meeting. And Aaron shall cast a lot upon the 2 goats, and a lot for the Lord and a lot for the scapegoat. The scapegoat, it's a word again which is not used outside of a biblical context. In fact, the word scape actually means nothing. It doesn't exist. In an Oxford dictionary, the word scape actually is a synonym to escape. Well, it's true that this word scape is taken from the Septuagint, that translated the Hebrew word Azazel as apopompaia, which means just letting go. And that's the key problem here in this chapter for the entire Christianity. Only one Christian denomination, to my knowledge, Seventh-day Adventists, understand the goat for Azazel as a symbol of the Satan. And actually, of course, this is the Jewish understanding. The rest of the Christians ignore Hebrew language and attempt to prove that the scapegoat symbolizes Jesus Christ or the Messiah. This has absolutely no sense. The Hebrew language is clear even today. If you go to Jerusalem, to the central market, Machane Yehuda, especially on Friday where everybody stands trying to sell their vegetables and fruits, and if you come to one of the sellers, who is usually a Sephardic Jew from Yemen or Egypt or other North African country, and he's selling to you a pound of something for 10 shekels, and you lowball him down to 2 shekels, you will hear that Hebrew expression, you go to Azazel. And of course, now you will understand what the Azazel means. Originally, according to Rabbi Jacob Milgram, who wrote his famous commentary as a part of the Anchor Bible series, the Azazel means the demon of the desert. And in fact, it is true that the goat for Azazel is sent to the desert. And in Hebrew mentality, desert is always a dwelling place for demons. Even in the Christian literature, in the gospel, it's very clear. For example, the words of Jesus, when the unclean spirit leaves the human being, he goes into the deserted place and wanders around there. The reason for it is very simple. Because the Judean desert is definitely a very dangerous place. And even today, there are several deaths every year due to some hikers who lose their way in the desert and wander around until they got dehydrated. And that is what's happening. That's definitely a goat for Azazel does not represent the Messiah. Because if this represents the Messiah, this is definitely an interesting situation. Because it says here in verse 21 and 22, it says that when Aaron shall lay both of his hands on the hand of the live goat and confess it all over the iniquities of the sons of Israel and their transgressions in regards to their sins, and he shall lay them on the head of the goat and send it away to the wilderness by the hand of man who stands in readiness. And 22 says, the goat shall bear on itself all the iniquities to a solitary land. Bearing the iniquities, that is important term, which in Hebrew mentality, in Torah, indicates carrying the responsibility. And that's how it's played out in the same, actually in the next Torah portion, which we study this week. It's in Kedoshim, Leviticus 20. Look, for example, verse 12. It talks about the man who lies with his daughter-in-law. both of them shall surely be put to death. They have committed incest. Their blood guiltness is upon them. That's the New American Standard Bible, which gives a little explanation of that expression, their blood is upon them. And then it explains here in verse 17 what it means. We already talked that the blood actually carries the sin. And it says here in Leviticus 17, if there is a man who takes his sister, his father's daughter, or his mother's daughter, so that he sees her nakedness and she sees his nakedness, it is a disgrace, and they shall be cut off in the sight of the sons of their people. He has uncovered his sister nakedness. He bears his guilt, or he bears his sin. So bearing the guilt is taking the responsibility. And that's why the goat for Azazel initially takes the responsibility for the entire sins of the entire assembly of Israel. How does it happen? What is actually happening? We talked that if Aaron makes the atonement, or he makes the kippur for all the people of Israel, it means that he is taking the sins upon himself from the entire sanctuary and from the people. We see the procedure here, which is very clear. I read verse 8 and 9. Aaron shall cast the lot for the 2 goats, 1 goat for the Lord, and the other lot is for a scapegoat. Now we talked about for Azazel. Then Aaron shall offer the goat on which the lot is the lot for the Lord, fell, and take it as a sin offering. But the goat on which the lot for Azazel fell shall be presented alive before the Lord to make an atonement upon him, to send it into the wilderness for Azazel. I have to make a literal translation here of verse 10, because in New American Standard Bible it says to make atonement upon it, which basically narrows down the options. In Hebrew there is no it. In Hebrew it says lekaper alav, to make a kippur with him. What does it mean? If Aaron makes the kippur and takes the sins for the sanctuary, this goat for Azazel is the final destination, the final point for the sins. This is why it is important to use the pronoun him, because it gives the option that he is not only the goat here, but it's the Lord. The Lord is relieving the iniquities which he carried in the Holy of Holies for the entire people upon the goat that represents the devil. How does it work? It works very simple. If we look in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 21, we will see this concept very clear. And again, sometimes by looking at the translation, we see how the Christian translators do not understand the concept. He had made him who knew no sin to be sin on our behalf. That's how the 2 Corinthians is translated in the New American Standard Bible and in many modern English translations. And that is the problem. We recommend this chapter to read as a complement to our Torah and Haftarah, specifically to emphasize here the importance of the role of Jesus. Who did not know the sin is made sin. What sense does it make? When Jesus dies for the murderer, does he actually become a murderer himself? When he dies for the adulterer, has he slept with that woman? Or when he dies for a thief, has he actually stole this stuff? No way. That's exactly what Satan wants to do. That's exactly what Satan wants, for people to believe that the ultimate reason for evil and for sins are in God. This is what happens in Yom Kippur. This is what happens why the God needs Kippur. Because God took away the sins from the people. Because that's how the sanctuary is constructed. The sins and impurities go straight to the Holy of Holies. And Aaron carries the blood of the goat of a sin offering and sprinkles it right at the throne of God. Does it mean that God wants to assume the responsibilities? No. That works like an insurance company. When the accident happens, the insurance company writes the check. But some recent crimes indicate how preposterous some of these insurance frauds can be. Even the recent commercial put by Allstate says, you're driving alone, you see no harm, and then you see how the driver in front of you drives too close. Then he slams on a brake and you rear-end it. And of course, these criminals has siphoned lots of money from these frivolous lawsuits from the insurance companies. Well, the task force was put, and the criminals are being put to prison. And the same thing happens here. The sanctuary, the Lord, is our insurer. But by writing a check to us, he doesn't assume the guilt and responsibility. There is an ultimate criminal. Jesus died for everyone, but he has not committed the crime. In the Greek language, the word hamartia, which translates Hebrew word chatat, means two things: sin and sin offerings. When the animal dies, when the sinner lays his hands upon the offering, the animal does not become a sinner. It just dies by accepting the punishment. Jesus accepted the punishment for sin, but he did not commit the sin. Jesus has become a sin offering, but as it says here, he knew no sin. And that's what Yom Kippur exactly sets into place. When the God is made kiper al, when God, through the high priests, unloads the sins which are collected in the sanctuary, in the Holy of Holies, upon the head of that scapegoat, the goat for Azazel, the problem of evil is resolved because the ultimate criminal has taken the responsibility. This is why in the Haftarah reading, Ezekiel chapter 22, the rabbi selected this chapter to actually indicate the connection between the Yom Kippurim ritual in the temple and the judgment, because only the judgment reflects and points out to the ultimate cause of evil. And this judgment is proclaimed by the prophecy of Daniel, chapter 8, verse 14. There is even a certain time, 2300 days and nights, when a sanctuary shall be cleansed.